Thank you so much. Sorry for that delay, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Can I get a round of applause for Fabian and Heiko for just saving the day over here when we almost didn't have this happen? This conference is incredible. I'm so happy to be here. Like she said, I'm speaking on something called Sustained Vegan Advocacy today. My name is Michael Webermann, and this is my first time ever speaking outside of the US in my entire life. And I am really excited. It's a silly thing, but I'm excited to tell a little story about how I became a vegan advocate because it's related to French very vaguely. So I grew up like most of us, loving some animals and eating other animals. And when I was 14 years old, I looked a little more like this probably. I was in my French class. So in the US, we pretty much only learn one language our entire lives, English, I know. And I was in my French class, and I had my light bulb moment. We learned how to say the names of farmed animals in French, and we learned how to say the noises that they make in French. So in English, we say that a pig goes oink. I believe in French, you guys say groin groin. Is that correct? All right, got it right, so I remembered something from that class. And then right after that, we learned how to say their cuts of meat in French. And I had never thought about those three things all together before. I'd never thought about an animal who makes a noise that's cute and then becomes my food. Of course, at some level, I knew that, right? Like, I was aware that pork came from pigs. I was aware that poultry came from chickens. I wasn't stupid. I just never thought about it before. And so I'm so excited to be presenting here so close to France and in Luxembourg for my first time abroad because literally the French language changed my life, basically, for the better. It's part of what made me a vegan advocate. And that's what started my path. I went vegetarian overnight, pretty much, after I thought about that. Well, actually, what I did, I was you saw the kind of punk rock annoyingness, so I was kind of jerky class clown. I raised my hand, I said, what's the human euphemism for meat? And they kicked me out of class. They put me to the counselor's office. They put me on like suicide watch. I was in a Catholic school. They didn't like me talking about eating human meat there. Apparently, I don't know. But like I said, I had that light bulb moment, and it progressed me on an activist path where I ended up putting myself in front of military convoys in Washington State to prevent them from, transporting military equipment, protesting the tar sands, disrupting Canadian business conferences, being sued by Goldman Sachs for Huntington Life Sciences activism, and eventually brought me to my path as the executive director of Farm Animal Rights Movement, where sometimes I am fortunate enough to get paid to disrupt congressional hearings on egg abusers and tell them to recall all egg production. But mostly at Farm, we do a different sort of work. Have people here heard, does people familiar with Farm's work? Only like 5 people? Okay, maybe 20 people, that's good. So Farm does a lot of work across the world. One thing we do is we put on a similar conference in the US, the Animal Rights National Conference. This year attracted 1,600 animal activists from across the globe to talk about some of these very same issues that we're working on here. We run a campaign called Meat Out every year, convincing the whole world to try to go vegan for one day. Put on World Day for Farmed Animals, which is happening in 3 weeks, getting people more active for one day. But our most ambitious program is one called the 10 Billion Lives North American Tour. It is specific to the US and Canada right now, but it's where I'm going to be drawing for a lot of the lessons that I'm going to be speaking about today. And I was said in my intro that I'll be talking about how to make people more active for longer. That's not totally true. What I'll really be talking about is how to get people to maintain during the step between quasi-vegan and vegan so that they can then become better activists. So it's really for us how to give tools to the fence sitters. It's not how we can ourselves become more active. Just a little heads up right now. But the 10 Billion Lives Tour is where we've done a lot of our research for the last 3 years at my organization, and where we've really gotten a better sense of all the needs that are not being met in people who are struggling to maintain their commitment towards veganism. So what we do is we offer incentives for people to watch a short graphic video on animal agriculture. Often we pay people $1 to do so. We also offer incentives like a 1 in 25 chance to win a movie ticket or to win an album. Any incentive to get them to watch the entirety of our short 4-minute video on animal agriculture. We then, after we kind of shock them into awareness, what we do is put them into another step, which is we have them pledge to explore a vegan diet for at least 1 day a week. 80% of all the people that we show this video do pledge to do that, and so as to date, we have over 250,000 people who have pledged to explore a vegan diet with us. Thank you. And so with this, our mission, of course, like everyone's in this room, is to create a world where animals are no longer raised, used, or killed for food at all. Everyone here knows, and not just for food, right? Everyone in here agrees that all animals, no matter how big, all animals, no matter how small, whether they live on land or whether they live on the sea, that all animals have worth, that no animals should be used and abused by people. And like so many of us in this room, we focus on the animals used for food for two primary reasons. One, because we know that they suffer so greatly, and two, because we know that they suffer in such large numbers, that they're killed in such large numbers. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard these numbers before, but I think it bears repeating so we understand the magnitude of the problem that we're up against, that every single year globally, the entire world, over 100 million, or billion rather, over 100 billion animals are killed for food every single year in the globe. Such a staggering number, we can't really wrap our heads around it. But the reality is that not just that, by the time I'm done with this talk, over 10 million animals will have been killed for food in the world. By the time I'm off this stage, by the time this talk is done, that's how many animals will be killed. Unless we all do better, right? Unless everyone in this room commits to doing a little bit better for those animals, to finding ways that we can continue to move things forward for them and do even better for them to see that number go down. And so one way that a lot of us do this, like I was saying, is to reach young people. And there's a really good reason for that. That's the main way that we are going to build a generation of animal advocates, right? If we can convince, I see a lot of people in this room seem my age or so, between 25 and 35 somewhere. If we can get the generation below us to say no to using animals, we're going to create a world where animal use becomes a rarity rather than the norm, rather than an everyday occurrence. And there are also some practical reasons, right, that a lot of us reach out to young people. One of them is that this generation is more open to our message. It's just the most animal-friendly generation that's ever happened in the world's history, probably. We've never had a generation that's so open to the idea that animals are not ours to use. Secondly, just being real, they're going to live longer because they're younger. So if we get someone to go vegan who's 16, that's going to save a lot more animals than getting someone to go vegan who's a later point in their life. Doesn't mean we shouldn't reach the rest of those people as well, but it means often reaching the youngest people is where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak. And the third is they're more likely to share this with others. They use social media so aggressively, they take their peer group so seriously, and that's where, again, we get into this idea of building a generation of animal advocates, that, again, if we can just reach enough of the young demographic, they're going to reach the rest of them for us. We don't have to reach all of them. We just have to reach a critical mass of young people. And our movement globally, in the US and abroad, is doing a very good job with that. We are reaching young people in masses, and we are getting them really pissed off about what's happening to animals. I mean, we can always do better, but we are not failing at this at all. Our movement is doing an excellent job getting young people horrified about what's going on to animals, not just in factory farms, not just in slaughterhouses, but really across the board, in circuses, in laboratories, in general. We have a generation of people who think that animal abuse, and often even animal use at all, is a horrible and wrong thing to do. But there's a big gap. There's a big area in which our movement is falling very, very short. And one way that I want to help demonstrate this is I want everyone in this room to imagine that you've opened up a business of some kind. And now I know we can be a little sensitive to business tricks here, so don't worry. This is not one of these getting things done, 7 highly effective habits, or how to win friends and influence people kind of talks. I think there's a little merit to those books, but that's not what we're doing here. I want us to imagine that we've opened, say, a vegan business or a vegan blog. Anything that requires repeat traffic of some sort. So a business like a restaurant that requires repeat customers, or you've started a blog that requires repeat visitors, repeat traffic, where you don't just want people to come once, not like buying a car where once every 10 years might work, but where you need constant repeat traffic. Imagine we've all done that. We've all started our dream nonprofit or dream business. We need this repeat traffic, and opening day, people are coming in. And it seems to you like people keep coming in, right? Pretend that it seems like you're getting all these new customers, but you notice that your numbers aren't really going up for some reason. Either your site visits aren't going up consistently, if it's a blog, or people, your money is not growing quickly if it's a business. And it starts to appear to you that maybe for every 2 people that you are getting in the door or getting to visit your site the first time, maybe only 1 is actually coming back, is staying. And you think, okay, that's not great, but that's not such a big problem. If I can just keep getting enough new people in the door, keeping 1 out of 2 is not so bad, right? So you work harder and harder, and you keep getting more new people in the door or more new people to your website, say. And still nothing's happening. For some reason, you're still not seeing any significant growth. And starts, you do some preliminary research, you do some informal, asking around, and you get the impression that it might be more like 3 out of 4 people are never coming back again. Only 1 out of 4 is sticking with you. And you say, this is a problem. This is not going well for me. And so you say, I'm going to hire the best marketing poll in the entire world to look into this for me, the best marketing company in the world. I'm going to get statistical analysis on this, analysts on this. We're going to get this going so well, we're going to know exactly what the problem is. And maybe you're suspecting it's kind of halfway between the two, maybe like 1 out of 3 people instead of 1 out of 4. And unfortunately, what you find instead is that 5 out of 6 people are never coming back to your blog or never coming back to your restaurant. That'd be a big problem, right? Yeah? I mean, like a really big problem, right? That'd be a big problem. And now, the reality is, though, that's what's faced with farm animals right now. That's what's happening in our movement, because 5 out of 6 people who explore a vegetarian or vegan diet don't return to it. Faunalytics, formerly known as the Humane Research Council, was the first to kind of really assess this deeply. We had suspicions it was somewhere between 1 out of 2 and 1 out of 4 people maintained their vegan diet. So Faunalytics hired the top tier marketing polls, got academic statistical analysis on this, and what they found out is that of US adults 17 and over, while 10% are former vegetarians, only 2% are current vegetarians. That means you add those two up, you got 12%. Only 2 still there. That's 1 out of 6. Only 1 out of 6 people are maintaining that vegetarian or vegan diet. And so all this work that we're doing into recruitment, and we're doing a great job with recruitment, again, not to say we can't do a little bit better, we can always do better, but all this work that we're doing with recruitment, 5 out of 6 of it is being lost because these people aren't returning to us. They're not sticking with us. And so in the US, a number that we hear a lot recently, good news number, is that we are slaughtering and killing 400 million fewer animals now every year than we were 10 years ago. And in the US, we use this as a big point of applause. And it should be, right? I mean, that is a lot of animals. 400 million fewer animals being killed in the US now than were being killed in 2005. But if all those other 5 people of every 6 were maintaining their vegetarian or vegan diet instead of just 1 out of 6, who knows how many fewer animals we'd be killing now than we were 10 years ago. We might be killing 2 billion fewer animals now than we were 10 years ago. So we're talking about the ability to save 5 times as many animals as we're currently saving, not by reaching more people, not even by reaching them better, just by keeping them. And so I hope that I'm starting to impress on you the serious magnitude of this problem, how greatly important this problem is. And so I'm going to give 5 simple tools that I think will help us as a movement. Some of these tools can be applied in our personal lives or individual lives. Some of these can be applied more to nonprofit work or larger work. But as a whole, I think these 5 tools will give our movement a lot that we need to better address this problem. And so the first one is, and we've heard a lot about this already, we've heard this in a few talks at this conference, but it bears repeating, is ensuring that veganism is perceived as affordable and perceived as convenient. And I say perceived here for a reason, because when people say why they left a vegan diet, the main reason they say is they felt that it was either too expensive or they felt that it was not convenient enough to them. Now, it doesn't matter if it really is. Like, we can think, well, we know these are college kids, they're wasting money on bar tabs all the time, they're going out drinking, they're wasting so much money, they can spend $1 more for vegan turkey instead of, turkey from an animal. It doesn't matter, though, if we know they can do it. They need to feel they can do it. They need to feel that vegan food is affordable and convenient because they think that it's not right now, and their perception is what's driving them away. And so that's why in the US, a lot of work is being done to get major chains like Subway to start offering vegan meats. We just got Ben & Jerry's, the ice cream chain, to agree to launch a first ever vegan ice cream line. And working with these companies that are not as interesting, not as sexy, like Aramark, to get vegan cafeteria food in cafeterias across the country, because that's really where a lot of these young people are eating most often. The second tool I want to talk about is pacing properly. And we've also heard a lot about this one, but there is an added nuance to it. So most of us agree, I'm sure, that people are going to go up the vegan staircase at their own pace, basically. And we're fairly okay with that, right? We know that some people are going to go more quickly, and some are going to go more slowly. But I'm going to guess that most of us would say, if we had to pick between quickly and slowly, that quickly is preferable, right? Most of us would say that if someone can go vegan quickly, why wouldn't they? But the data is mixed on that, and in fact is looking more the opposite way. In that same Phonalytics study, one thing they found is that a large majority of the former vegetarians and vegans, 65%, transitioned in a matter of just days or weeks. And their findings suggest that the faster people transitioned, the more likely they were to become an ex-vegetarian or ex-vegan. And so it actually might be in the animal's interest to encourage change more slowly. When someone says, oh my God, you've just changed my entire world with this information, I'm gonna go vegan tomorrow. This seems counterintuitive. It might actually be beneficial to say, no, not so fast. You don't need to do it all overnight. Because I think most of us, we know most people won't do it overnight, but if someone says they're going to, I think we're usually very happy about that. We usually encourage that. But the data is showing that those who go vegan overnight, again, are the least likely to remain long-term vegans. And so going slowly might actually be in the better interest of animals long-term. Third tool I want to talk about is the fact that these numbers matter. So something we hear a lot, of course, is we'll give this information to someone, and they'll say, I can't go vegan right away, or I can't go vegan at all. I can't see myself ever going vegan. And probably the first thing that we do, as we should, is convince them that they can. Right? We say, yeah, you can. It's not that hard. There's all these affordable options. You're going to feel so much better. You're going to be living your values better. And sometimes that works, right? Sometimes someone will just kind of, they didn't really mean it. They probably could go vegan. And when they can't, though, if they really clearly mean it, we either can walk away. We shouldn't do that. We can tell them to eat more humane animal products instead. We shouldn't do that. Or we can tell them to reduce, right, to move more slowly, as we just talked about. And obviously, that's the best of those options. But when we are telling them what to consume within that, what we have to remember is that the types of animals they're eating matter as well. You know, if we were killing pigs, chickens, fishes, and cows in equal numbers, then we could just tell people to reduce across the board, and it wouldn't matter. But that's not the reality. As I'm sure most of us know, just two of these types of animals, chickens and fishes, account for over 99% of all the animals eaten globally because they're smaller. It takes so much more meat, so many more chickens, so many more fishes to get the equivalent amount of meat. And so when someone's eating a quarter pound of chicken, they're consuming a much larger piece of a chicken than someone eating a quarter pound of hamburger. And so it's important that people realize that most of the animals they're eating are chickens and fishes, and if they can't envision themselves going vegan, all they have to do is cut in half the amount of chicken and fish they're eating, and they will basically cut in half the number of animals that they are killing. It's a great way to have them create immediate good and set themselves up for the longer term good. And the next point is a little more global, a little more for maybe nonprofit work, less for individual advocacy, but it's really, really important that we need to communicate modernly. So my organization, Farm, we did an in-depth follow-up of people who had just pledged to go vegan with us. And we paid them $5 each to take a 100-question survey, basically about all the reasons that they felt their pledge might work or might not work, how they consume social media, what types of places they eat at. And of all the findings that we had, the one that was the starkest by far, was that their favorite way to learn things is Facebook and videos, basically. And that books and even traditional websites are very low on their interest of learning things. And surprisingly, actually, books ranked above traditional websites. So standard websites were the last way that our demographic of like 16 to 24-year-olds were interested in basically in learning information. And so this is a really big tool for us, though, because not only can we use Facebook to talk to people frequently, I mean, we can hit them up so many more times, right? If they like our Facebook page, we can now talk to them daily instead of once ever with a leaflet, or maybe rarely with an email or with a physical address. We can also show them videos, though, right? Which is really important because we can remind them why this is so important. And more importantly than that is that they can share it with other people. That basically social media gives us a tool to immediately convert people from just interested to vegans themselves, to activists in almost no time, basically, in almost no time at all, which is, again, another way that we're able, with this younger generation, to build up this team of animal advocates. And the great thing about getting them to share information is it works both ways. When they share, the data shows that they become more committed to their own pledge. So not only is their sharing making their peer group more likely to go vegan, it's actually making them themselves feel more like veganism is something important to them, feel like activism, like animals, are something that's important to them. And so when people are, sorry, just checking my time here. Oh, I have plenty of time. I'm actually almost done. I spoke very quickly because I knew I was running late. I guess I spoke too quickly. I hope you could hear me. Hope I wasn't speaking too quickly. When people share this information, again, they become more likely to keep their pledge themselves. And to me, that's just as important. And the last tool I want to talk about, and this is probably my favorite one, because a lot of this data I think might feel a little trite to us. You know, it might feel like, why have we become a marketing movement, right? Aren't we supposed to be about the animals? And is it really in the animals' interest that we take all these business tricks, that we take all these marketing tricks, that we use Facebook better, that we work with big corporations to get these products cheaper and more available, that we do all these marketing tricks? And I feel that way sometimes too. You know, when I'm talking to my friends in other social justice movements, my friends in the gay rights and trans rights movements, my friends in the feminist movements, my friends in the racial justice movements, and I hear them talking about issues all the time, right? And I realize that half my job is marketing, basically. Sometimes it does feel a little bit petty to me. And so I saved this point for last, my fifth tool for last, because it's my favorite point, which is that the data shows that that this is a good tool. That the last reason that people frequently drop off their pledge to move towards a vegan diet, the last reason that people stop maintaining their commitment to explore veganism is they just get bored with it, basically. They lose interest. They were once shocked into action, and they have forgotten why the issue is so important to them. But the other thing the data shows, the good news, is that regardless of why they originally pledged, so if someone decided to go vegan because of the environment, someone decided to go vegan because of the animals, someone decided to go vegan for their own health, regardless of which reason they started to move towards a vegan diet for, the animals is the one that keeps them. And when we increase their concern for animals, we increase the likelihood that they are going to not just stay vegan, but also get others to move towards a vegan diet as well. And so, I kind of spoke a little more quickly than I meant to, because I knew that there was technical difficulties and that I didn't want to hold everyone through the next talk and through lunch. But I do, in addition, two things I want to do. I want to repeat these tips for you. Hopefully they stick in. Hopefully you find them useful. So once again, we need to make sure that veganism is easy and affordable and perceived as easy and affordable. Not just that it actually is, but that we're working with people so that they perceive it as easy and affordable. Because their perception is all that really matters. It doesn't matter how affordable it is if they still think that veganism is this expensive niche lifestyle. So that's one. Number two is we need to make sure that people are pacing properly. At minimum, that if someone says they want to go slowly, we should never encourage them to go too quickly. And on the flip side, if someone says they're going to go quickly, we might, again, even want to consider telling them, hey, just hold up for a second. Why don't you start, with a couple days a week or something? The third point related to that is if they are going slowly, these numbers matter a lot. We need to focus on the animals that are being killed in the largest numbers and that are suffering the most so that we can make the biggest gains first and make the smaller gains later rather than vice versa. Same amount of effort, right? I mean, cutting your chicken in half or cutting your beef in half is equally difficult or easy, but one of them makes a far, far bigger impact. The fourth tool, again, is that we communicate modernly, that we know that the people that we most need to reach don't really read books, and they don't really visit websites in a browser, in a URL. They use YouTube, and they use Facebook, and we need to use YouTube and Facebook if we want people to make these changes. And of course, my favorite one is that we need to increase their concern for animals, because their concern for animals is what's going to make them more likely to stay vegan, what's going to make them more likely to make other vegans. But before I wrap up, I want to say that more importantly than any of these 5 tools, and again, I hope these 5 tools do bear usefulness for you in your everyday lives and your activism, but far more important than you memorizing a list of 5 tools that you may or may not use, there's really 2 way, way bigger things I'd like to impress and that I hope people have gotten out of my somewhat short time on the stage. One of them is getting over this notion that if slaughterhouses had glass walls, we know the rest of this, right? What is it? Slaughterhouses had glass walls. Everyone would be vegetarian. It's not true. It's not true at all. The fact is that we're learning this. We have this notion that if people could just go inside these slaughterhouses and these farms, that they would go vegetarian, they would go vegan. And the data is showing that's not true. It harms animals. It's bad for animals to think that way. It's bad for animals to act that way. Animals cannot afford for us to act any longer like just putting the information out and seeing what sticks is an acceptable way to act. And the animals can't afford for us, even when we've seen what sticks, for us to put the information out, watch someone get interested, and then say that it's up to them to make the change from there. I had someone, a somewhat influential person in the US say something along those lines to me recently. And it made me so sad that strategic people are still thinking that way. They said, I don't know why you're putting all of this effort into the vegan retention. That's not our job. They said, our job is to get the information out there. I said, no, our job is to save animals, right? Our job is to save animals. And it doesn't matter. If the information is not what's getting people to go vegan, then we have a moral obligation as a movement to do more than just get that information out there. We have a moral obligation to support people in their vegan paths and support them in the next path to become activists from there. And the final point, and it's related to this, and it's my favorite thing about all this actually, is being able to get over this idea of pragmatism versus philosophical soundness. We hear a lot in the animal rights movement. I know we hear it all the time in the US, and in my less than 24 hours here so far, I mean, I flew in for 21 hours of flying yesterday, got in here at like 1900 hours. So I've barely been here at all, and I have already seen this debate come up so many times in just a few hours here. And it's not that we shouldn't have it. It's, to me, that it so rarely actually has to be pit against each other. It's so rare that I find in my own activism that I need to pick between being philosophically sound or being pragmatic. On occasion, yes, we do have to do that, right? And we're all going to pick which side we fall on. I tend to fall slightly on the pragmatic side. Some of us are going to fall slightly on the philosophically sound side, you know, being basically pure to our highest ethics. But the more important thing is how rarely we even have to do that. That what we're seeing here, for instance, with the idea that increasing the concern for animals is what increases the vegan pledge, is that we don't need to pick. That the work that's most pragmatic is the work that advances our philosophies the best. And so we don't need to think that we're always in this duality between theory and practice. The practice is the theory. We're living the theories, and we're making these theories more livable for other people. And so what we're seeing is that when we have a whole generation of people ahead of us, who hate this. They hate it as much as we do. And just as much as we do, they want to see it return to this. And so I hope that everyone here, does anyone here want to build a generation of animal advocates? Can you raise your hand? Can you clap if you want to build a generation of animal advocates? All right, me too. And we're going to do it through sustained vegan advocacy. Thank you.
Maybe we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Are there any?
Has Farm ever done any work in schools for children?
Children like under the age of 12, you mean? Or
Both primary and high school children?
yeah, we don't do any work under the age of 12 or 13, mostly because it's both difficult to get into those schools with our message, and it's difficult to assess how much good we're actually doing. But yeah, we do a lot of work with high schools. We do talks, humane education talks, where we give, lectures similar to this one, but more focused on the why to go vegan than on the how to become better advocates. Yeah, we do a fair amount of that. We do it more in colleges, just because there's less censorship on colleges, about universities, about, what messages we can show. But we have been working, especially to get more into the high schools that are in the areas that funnel people into the elite schools, to the Ivy League schools. We know that if we can get the kids between age like 13 and 18 who are going to go on to these influential schools later, they might have a larger chance of influencing, other people, beyond themselves.
Another question over there.
Thank you for a great talk. First, I would like to say that I think you maybe missed to say it's very important. You talked about former vegetarians and vegans, but we heard of from Tobias, for example, that there is very much this aspect of if people have first the experience with vegetarianism, veganism, what kind of substitutions there are, that they are more open for animal rights arguments. And I think many people who say, I personally also met many people who say, I have been vegetarian for 2 months, but I didn't like it, or I was vegan and just wanted to try it, but most of those people maybe have become vegan or vegetarian not because of the animal rights arguments, because of the what kind of pictures we show them from the factory farms, but because of environmental reasons, because of health, because many people are just spontaneous. They want to try new things. They've heard from the media, veganism is a new trend, I want to try it, and then they try it with the motivation just to try, and then they return with the same motivation, okay, I tried it, and that's enough now. I didn't like it so much, but they don't understand maybe, or they didn't really think so long about all the arguments. And I wanted to ask, or somehow to a little bit question this data you presented in the beginning. You said 10% are former vegetarians and vegans, right?
In the US, yes.
In the US, and
but I should say, I meant to say, I wasn't sure if I was going to have time to go into some of the details. That was a strict food questionnaire. That was not self-identified. So far more people in the US currently identify as vegetarian or vegan and identify as ex-vegetarian or vegan. This was actually using a detailed food survey of how often do you eat, red meat, poultry, vegetables, fruit, nuts, and people didn't know why they were taking this survey at all. So it was basically presented as a food survey, and it was asked how often you eat these things now, how often you ate them 1 year ago, how often 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and so it was a true vegetarian a survey, I should say, just so you know why the numbers might seem so low. Since it seems like one of the things you were going to be asking is why the numbers seem so low. It seems so low because we were using the truest definition of vegetarian rather than self-identified vegetarians.
Okay, thank you. And one thing I wanted to add, you said if we encourage people to go more quickly to a vegetarian and vegan diet, of course, I agree to you that they might lose motivation if they see that they don't make it so quickly. But maybe there are more variables which we forget in this consideration. Maybe, how to say, maybe people just go quicker, not because of our activism, because we encourage them more, because we show more more horrible pictures, but just because the people are this way, are more spontaneous, right?
Sure, and that's why I'm suggesting that we actively encourage them to go slowly. Rather than be neutral, I'm suggesting that we actually go out of our way to encourage them to go slowly. Actually, I'm going to ask a show of hands here. Who here went straight from eating meat to veganism, was never a vegetarian? Okay, a few of us, like 4 or 5 people, where we saw there that 65% of the ex-vegetarians and ex-vegans did it almost overnight, basically. And so we're seeing in this room that almost everyone who is a hardcore activist, and I mean, for those of you who did it overnight and are still an activist, that's fantastic. I mean, that's even better. But it's rare. We just saw in a room of hardcore activists, almost every one of us had a transition phase. And so I'm suggesting that even if someone is spontaneous, even if they are saying they're going to go overnight, that we tell them not to. I'm suggesting that we actually try to stop them from going overnight rather than just being neutral and letting them go at whatever pace they want to go. Because the data shows that they're a lot more likely to stick with it and become an activist if that's what their path is. And I should say, I'm sorry, by the way, thank you for all your questions. I mean, I was actually hoping to get into some of this in the talk, and I just rushed because I knew that I started so late because of difficulties, so I'm glad to be able to address a few of these. And you had said one other thing. You were asking about the different motivations. And I totally agree. A lot of people go for a lot of different reasons, and that's all good. That's why I'm suggesting that regardless of why they start being a vegetarian or vegan, that we, as quickly as possible, jump in with the animal message. So if someone goes vegan for health, we say, that's fantastic, I hope you feel better. Do you feel better? They say, yeah, I feel great. We say, yeah, that's wonderful. I feel great as a vegan too. And the other reason I feel so great is because I know I'm living my highest ethics. I know that I'm not contributing to the death of animals anymore. And just immediately, same thing with the environment. They say, oh, I went vegan because I learned that more greenhouse gases are created by the animal industries than by cars. And we say, yeah, me too. I don't drive very often and I'm a vegan. I feel great about the environment. But the other reason I feel so great about this is because, and then come in with the same message again. I'm just suggesting that regardless of why they start going vegan, they're going to stay vegan a lot longer. And I'm not suggesting, the data shows that they'll stay vegan a lot longer if we can also get that animal message into them as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you for a great talk, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Great questions. We got, I guess it's 12, so I think we're gonna...
Yeah, we have to stop now.
All right.
Maybe everybody who has questions can meet you outside.
Oh, yeah, I'm around. I'm here the rest of the weekend, so just find me either anywhere or find me right outside here in 2 minutes. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.